everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Captain America Brave New World, which is the penultimate film in Marvel's Phase 5, the fourth Captain America movie, but the first one ever since Sam Wilson took over the shield. This movie takes place sometime after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where Sam Wilson, once again played by Anthony Mackie, has fully taken on the role as Captain America. He's recruited by the newly elected President Ross, played this time by Harrison Ford, to try and restart the Avengers and attempt to be on good terms with Sam Wilson after the shit that Ross was partially responsible for in Civil War, where he branded Sam, Steve, and so many of the other Avengers as criminals. However, there's a conspiracy going on to try and frame Thaddius Ross, so it's up to Sam Wilson to try to get down to the bottom of this and see what exactly is going on. Now, I did a written review for this movie on my Tumblr page. One of my new priorities for this new year is to try to do some more writing. So with Captain America Brave New World, I did a spoiler-free written review on my Tumblr account. You can go check that out for yourself. And if there's any movie out there like this one where I have a lot to say that warrants a video review, I'm going to be reviewing these movies in the way I would review an older movie in my retro reviews, where I'm talking about spoilers with the idea that you have already seen this movie. And considering that the movie's been out all weekend and it's made a decent amount of money, I don't feel bad about talking about the spoiler elements of this movie. Plus, with my reviews for Jurassic World Dominion and Madam Web, where I just come out of the gate spoiling those movies, you guys seem to like those videos, so why don't I do it for a movie that I don't dislike? In fact, I actually rather like Captain America Brave New World. There's a lot in this film that I think really does work. First of all, the action scenes are pretty fantastic. One of my favorite elements from Falcon and the Winter Soldier was that big action scene in the canyon in the first episode, where Sam is just dipping and diving back and forth through the canyon. It really put me on the edge of my seat. Well, we get many action scenes like this. The biggest highlight is when Captain America and Falcon are flying around trying to de-escalate tensions between the US and the Japanese at Celestial Island. You know, Tiamat's corpse that got turned into marble at the end of the Eternals. And with all of these action scenes, the movie does a really good job at showing us how different Sam Wilson is from Steve Rogers as Captain America. I mean, it's a very surface level idea, but the action scenes themselves are definitely a different flavor than the Steve Rogers trilogy. Especially that fight between Captain America and Red Hulk. There were some points in that fight where it actually got straight up bloody, and I didn't expect that at all. As for Anthony Mackie, he's still just as charismatic as ever in this series, and the one thing I like about this movie is that we don't spend any time at all trying to once again have Sam Wilson prove to himself why he's worthy of being Captain America, because we had an entire miniseries dedicated to that. There's really only one moment in the movie where we get something like that, and that's when Ross tells Sam, "You're not Steve Rogers," except in the trailer, it's followed up by, "You're right, I'm not." But in this movie, it's more of a hurtful impact to Sam, which I didn't really appreciate, but I'm just glad the whole movie didn't do something like that. Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, the new Falcon, is really good, and I like how their friendship is not just a simple Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes clone. And I never got the impression that Joaquin was essentially Captain America's sidekick. He was pretty much his partner through and through. Shira Haas has actually drawn a lot of controversy for playing an Israeli superhero, and that's a whole can of worms that I don't really want to open up because of all the horrors that's going on in Gaza. But I will say right now, the movie only makes one mention that this character is from Israel, and that's pretty much it. But as for this actress and her performance, when she first comes onto the scene, I thought she was just really flat. But as the movie goes on, she gets some moments to shine. We find out that she's a former Black Widow, which is supposedly different from her character in the comics. And maybe there are reasons why they made that change. But regardless, I ended up not fully liking this character to the point where, oh my god, she's amazing or iconic, but she had her moments. She was fine. Now let's talk about Harrison Ford as Thaddius Ross, because he took over the role from William Hurt, who passed away a couple years ago after Black Widow came out. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to William Hurt at all, because he's an amazing actor. he was terrible as Thaddius Ross. Like, there was never a point in those movies where it seemed like he cared to be in them. In fact, in The Incredible Hulk, he felt like he was kind of drunk at points. Again, William Hurt's an amazing actor, did not work as Thaddius Ross. Harrison Ford is essentially just playing grumpy old Harrison Ford, and we love him for that. But in this movie, I thought there were a few moments where he kind of made me sympathize for Ross. There are some points in this movie where we learn he had a straining relationship with his daughter, Betty. And if you've been following the MCU since day one, you know exactly the reasons why. And this is weird because Thaddius Ross was always a character, whether it be the comics or the movies, that I never trusted. I just looked at him and went, you're a slimy scumbag, and I don't trust anything you say. But Harrison Ford did manage to make him somewhat sympathetic, especially when we get to the end of the movie. So it worked, and the sequences with Red Hulk are actually pretty great. I mentioned the big action scene at the end, but when Red Hulk is rampaging throughout this movie before Captain America engages him, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm always up for a good Hulk smashing scene. Now let's get into the stuff about this movie that just doesn't work all the way, because this was not one of my most anticipated movies of the year, mainly because it was reshot to death. Apparently the movie was restructured and just delayed several times. Not to mention all the controversy surrounding the Israeli Black Widow and the fact that the movie's original title was New World Order. Doesn't really sound all that great. So with all that knowledge, I was surprised to find that this movie was actually somewhat consistent. But you can also clearly tell what was done in reshoots and what feels like an afterthought, because this movie can be a straight up mess at points. There are characters and plot points in this movie that are solely there just as MacGuffins. For example, Isaiah Bradley from Falcon and the Winter Soldier returns in this movie, and he has a scene in the beginning where, if you've seen the trailer, you know he tries to kill Thaddeus, and then he's sent away in prison. He disappears for the rest of the movie until the end, and you just kind of forget about him at a certain point. Giancarlo Esposito is an amazing actor. He doesn't have a whole lot to do in this movie, and his role in this movie can be the equivalent to Andy Serkis's You Silly's Claw in Avengers Age of Ultron, where he's only there because he needs to move the plot along, and he's probably going to pop up in a future movie because he's the head of the Serpent Society in this film. And while he's marketed as the main villain, his role is just more of an extended cameo. The real villain in this movie is actually Samuel Stearns from The Incredible Hulk. That's right, 17 years later, after The Incredible Hulk, we finally get this villain's return, and honestly, a lot of people are criticizing this villain as being weak, and I don't really think it's his fault, because he was actually introduced in a prior movie. We got to see a little bit of him before he became the leader. He's never called that in the movie, but we know that's who he is. And Tim Blake Nelson does a really good job in this role. The problem with this villain, though, is just more in the writing. Because we haven't seen this character since The Incredible Hulk, a lot of the things that we're caught up on is via exposition. Whether it's what he's been up to in the nearly 2 decades since that movie came out, his relationship with Thaddeus Ross and why he wants to expose him and just frame him altogether. It's not really handled to the best of the film's abilities, and I think it might have to do with all those reshoots. And then when it comes to Celestial Island, the big thing that everybody was looking forward to, just because there's a giant celestial coming out of the earth, why does nobody address it? It's the setting to an amazing action scene, and it provides adamantium for the MCU, but that's really about it. The runtime also doesn't really help things either. This is the shortest of the Captain America movies, at under 2 hours. And because this movie is moving at such a brisk pace, there's not a whole lot of time for us as the audience to take in certain moments, because we're just rushing to the next plot point or the next big action scene. And lastly, there are some terrible, and I mean terrible, green screen shots in this movie. While I think most of the visual effects work is decent to good, whenever you see those green screen shots, you'll be instantly reminded of Justice League and Spider-Man No Way Home, where you just go, how much did this movie cost, and why does it look like this? I see a lot of people making this comparison online with other big budget Hollywood movies, and I don't like to do it just because they're kind of two different movies, but when I watch something like Godzilla Minus One and I see the characters on the ships as they're about to go out to the sea to battle Godzilla, I thought those were real ships. I didn't know those were green screen effects. With this movie, you could tell they're green screen effects, and they are jarring, absolutely jarring. So to wrap this review up, because of my very low expectations going into the movie, I was surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. It's got some great action scenes, the actors are a ton of fun to watch, and the plot itself was surprisingly consistent considering all the reshoots. But you can also tell what sequences are the products of reshoots. The movie moves way too fast for its own good, and there are some moments of payoff that I don't think work too well. Liv Tyler returns in this movie as Betty Ross, and as being a fan of the Incredible Hulk movie from 2008, she was the one actor outside of William Hurt that I looked at and went, she's terrible. And in this movie, she's no better than she was in The Incredible Hulk. It's supposed to be a heartwarming scene where she reunites with Thaddius and they rekindle their relationship. But it just doesn't work because Harrison Ford is trying to make this scene work, but Liv Tyler is just as bad as she was in The Incredible Hulk. I'm sorry. Outside of Lord of the Rings, I don't find her to be a good actress. When I did my written review for this movie, I said it was good but not great, and I'll actually stick by that rating for the video review because there are many elements to like about this movie, and I think it's far better than some critics are giving it credit for. It's not the worst thing that Marvel has ever done, Quantumania. But I do agree with some people that Sam Wilson's first outing as Captain America in a movie should have been a lot better than this, especially considering how amazing the Steve Rogers trilogy was. I enjoyed this movie for the same reason I enjoyed a movie like Ant-Man and the Wasp or The Marvels, where it's better than people give it credit for, but I'm not blind to any of the flaws in this film. If you went into this movie with low expectations, you might be surprised by some of the things that this movie does. But if you just don't like this genre altogether, then it's not worth your time, and nor is that stinger. This might actually have the most pointless stinger in all the MCU. It just made me go, why did I wait so long for something so disappointing? That's all I'll say. And there you go, that's my review for Captain America Brave New World. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I also want to give a special thank you to my subscribers and YouTube members right over here. You guys are the reason why this channel continues to grow, and if you want to help support the channel even further, you can join YouTube memberships for as little as $1.99 a month. But until next time, I want to know what you guys think about Captain America Brave New World. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to follow me elsewhere on the internet, you can find me on these social media platforms and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.